I have always been uncomfortable with the story that I am about to tell to you all, partly because it was so odd and out of the ordinary, but nevertheless, in the spirit of October and the fact that I am starting to go camping again, I thought it would be interesting to share my own scary camping experience. This happened during the summer of 2012 when I was 15 and still an active member of a local Boy Scouts troop. I went camping, something my troop had frequently done. The camp we chose was for a full weekend. It was a nice forested area with taller grass. It also lacked other campers, and we saw no cars driving in or out throughout the time we spent there. Since we did not have to worry about other campers, our troop had a big campfire on Saturday night that went late into the night. Eventually, our campfire started to die out, prompting us to put it out and head to our respective tents and hit the hay. Oddly for me, I was unable to sleep that night. I usually slept well on campouts, especially when I have the pleasure of using a tent alone, like I had done on this occasion. So I sat there in complete silence, listening to the various sounds around my tent. Eventually, I found myself dozing off until I heard something walking near our campsite. There was a very apparent rustling of grass that began to get closer and closer to the blob tents that our boys were sleeping in. After a solid minute of movement, the sound stopped right in front of a tent that was about 7 or so feet from mine. I then heard the rustling start up again and headed off in the direction of the forest. I was paralyzed with fear. What could have made that sound? I thought about it for a solid few minutes and eventually decided it must have been an adult checking on us. Before I went to sleep, I looked out the little tent mesh window at the side of my tent and did not see anything out of the ordinary in our campsite. The sound went on for a bit in the distance, but I did not record for how long as I eventually fell asleep. I woke up later that night to the same sound of rustling, yet this time it was close to our tent circle, as it was the first time I heard it. While I did not think too much of this, I silently listened to the sound to see where it was headed. It once again went to the same area it did the first time. Being curious, I peered through the tent window to see what was making the noise. My face turned white, and I could not move. My mind was still trying to register what was going on. I saw a large black figure standing before the tent in the darkness, and it was clear it was not a scout, as the figure had no flashlight on and was far too large to be any boy in our troop. Suddenly, the figure inched their hand to the tent door and began to slowly unzip it. After what felt like several minutes, the figure seemed to poke their head into the tent. Immediately after, a deafening screech came from the tent. I heard other tents being unzipped and saw lights being flashed at one tent, as well as a black figure starting to run away from the tent. Within seconds, the figure was running out of view into the line of trees. A few adults at the adult camp came to see the commotion. The boys who were in the tent told what they had experienced, and several boys mentioned that they heard the sound of rustling in the grass around our tents throughout the night. Unfortunately, none of the boys were able to get a clear view of the person, except that the figure looked like a man and he wore dark clothing. Disturbed, the adults had us be moved to the campsite where they were staying at, and 2 adults volunteered to stay awake for the rest of the night in case of the creep's return. The next morning, we quickly packed up our stuff and left as fast as possible. We warned the ranger in charge, who called the local sheriff. From what I know, the person was never caught and our troop never camped there again. It was easily one of my most frightening experiences and something I would always remember when I went camping during my time as a Boy Scout. My name is Daniel, and this happened back in 2014 when I used to be a Boy Scout. Our troop, led by Scoutmaster Mr. Thompson, was always up for an adventure. So when he announced that we were heading to the forbidden campsite, our curiosity far outweighed any fear of ghost stories or eerie legends. Nestled deep within the woods, the forbidden campsite had been shrouded in mystery for as long as anyone could remember. Whispers of the campers who had braved the sight and returned changed had woven a chilling tapestry of legends. But we, a group of eager young campers, couldn't resist the allure of a true adventure. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the woods in an inky darkness, we arrived at our destination. The towering oak tree at the center of our campsite marked our sacred ground. The first night was a mix of excitement and tension as we huddled around the campfire. Our scoutmaster, Mr. Thompson, decided to indulge us with the sinister tales that encircled this forbidden place. Listen carefully, boys. The forbidden campsite conceals its secrets well, and over the years, strange stories have emerged. Whispers in the night, phantom campfires, and shadowy figures lurking at the edge of the forest. His words sent shivers through our young spines, but we were far from deterred. Brimming with youthful enthusiasm, we embarked on this eerie adventure, convinced we were immune to the tales that clung to this place. The night descended upon us, and we retreated to our tents, the forest settling into an uncanny silence. Crickets chirped and leaves rustled in the gentle wind, but as we would soon find out, the legends of the forbidden campsite were far from mere campfire tales. The heart of Whispering Woods held secrets more terrifying and profound than anything we had ever imagined. As the second night at the forbidden campsite loomed, our initial excitement had given way to a haunting unease. Mr. Thompson's tales were no longer just stories, they were becoming our reality. It began with the whispers. At first we dismissed them as a trick of the wind or our own overactive imaginations, but they grew louder, more insistent, and distinctly human. It was as if unseen voices carried secrets that floated on the night air, teasing and tormenting us. Sleep evaded us, and fear had settled in our hearts. We couldn't pinpoint the source of these ghostly utterances, but they seemed to emanate from the surrounding forest. Terrified, we huddled in our tents, clutching our flashlights and pocket knives, as if they could shield us from whatever was out there. I was not alone in my paranoia. My fellow scouts, their faces pale in the moonlight, shared their own encounters. Whispers from the trees, eerie shadows flitting past our tents, and branches that creaked as if under the weight of invisible footsteps. By the third night, some boys were on the verge of tears. Mr. Thompson, who had been a symbol of leadership and strength, appeared as shaken as the rest of us. We begged him to call off the expedition, to retreat from the forbidden campsite, but he remained resolute, determined to unravel the mysteries that haunted this place. Our fear of the unknown intensified as the campsite's mysteries deepened. Phantom campfires flickered in the distance, drawing our attention to the very edge of the woods. When we dared to investigate, there was nothing but an eerie emptiness and the unsettling feeling that we were not alone. As the nights passed, our resolve began to wane and doubt gnawed at our courage. What malevolent forces lurked within the Whispering Woods? We were about to find out, but none of us could have predicted the horrors that awaited us on that final fateful night. It was the fourth night in the forbidden campsite, and the entire troop was consumed by dread. Whispers still taunted us, but they were no longer the most unnerving aspect of our ordeal. Our very surroundings seemed to have changed. As we peered into the dark abyss of the Whispering Woods, we noticed grotesque silhouettes swaying in the trees. We could hardly believe our eyes. Lifeless bodies, hanging like grotesque ornaments. They were not Halloween decorations, but real decomposing corpses. Panic swept through our camp like wildfire. We couldn't fathom the horrors that had transpired in these woods, and the realization sent shockwaves of terror through our ranks. Mr. Thompson, who had been so determined to uncover the campsite's secrets, was now paralyzed with fear. We gathered around the campfire, our faces etched with horror and disbelief, as we tried to make sense of the grisly scene around us. Our scout leader finally revealed what he had discovered. This campsite had once been home to a sinister cult that had practiced dark rituals and sacrifices. The corpses that dangled from the trees were the unfortunate victims of this malevolent cult, forever etched into the Whispering Woods as a testament to the evil that had once thrived here. As our hearts pounded in our chests, a feeling of foreboding took over. We had to leave this cursed place, but escape would not come easy. The forest seemed to conspire against us, with trees bending and shifting to block our way. With no other options, we followed the winding path deeper into the woods, desperate to escape. But as we journeyed, the unsettling whispers grew louder, more urgent, and somehow more insidious. The feeling that malevolent eyes watched us intensified. We stumbled upon an ancient, desecrated altar, its stones stained with the blood of countless victims. At that moment, we realized that we had stumbled into something beyond our comprehension. This sinister force would not let us leave without a fight. As we trekked deeper into the heart of the whispering woods, the forest seemed to come alive, twisting and writhing with malicious intent. The path that had once led us in was now lost, replaced by an endless labyrinth of twisted trees and malevolent shadows. My heart pounded with a mixture of terror and determination. It was clear that we were not the first to enter these woods, nor would we be the last. As we struggled to find an escape, the whispers grew more frenzied, as if urging us to join the gruesome fate that awaited all those who dared enter the forbidden campsite. The whispering woods held us captive in its grasp, a grim reminder of the horrors lurking beneath the surface of seemingly tranquil places. As dawn's first light finally broke through the night, we realized that some secrets were better left undiscovered. With the first rays of light, the whispers ceased, and we managed to find our way back to the safety of the trailhead. The forbidden campsite remained untouched, a dark memory forever etched into our hearts. We never spoke of our chilling encounter again, and Mr. Thompson retired from leading expeditions. The forest had claimed its victims once more, and we were among the lucky few who managed to escape its malevolent grasp. The horrors of the Whispering Woods would forever haunt our memories, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can fester even in the most unsuspecting places. I honestly can't believe I'd forgotten about this. This happened back in the fall of either 2002 or 2003 when I was around 12 or 13 years old near Clinton Lake in Kansas on a Boy Scout campout. I still go backpacking and camping a lot, but this was the last camping trip I remember attending before moving states. We arrived at our campsite on a Friday and planned on staying through Saturday and leaving Sunday morning. I remember us having to set our tents up in the rain Friday evening, but Saturday was sunny and gorgeous. I don't remember every precise detail, but right before we went out to hike that morning, an old van, perhaps a late 70s model, pulled into a campsite within view of ours. These guys were hippies with a capital H, and that was my first exposure to what weed smells like when some of us asked if a skunk was nearby. They were too far away for us to hear any specific conversations, but even the adult leaders found this to be a funny sight. One of the leaders, I think, went over there to ask that they stop using drugs in front of us or to move campsites. When we got back from our day hike, those hippies were still at the same campsite, and so baked that they couldn't play their instruments with any skill. Here's where it got weird. By the time the sun was setting, the group of stoners had completely ditched their hippie attire and had dressed in total goth style. Some had makeup that made their faces unnaturally pale. Others had black trench coats on, and they must have had a stereo, because all we could hear over there was grunge metal playing. That night, after we cooked and ate dinner, all the scouts, including myself, headed out into an open area of the campgrounds to play capture the flag. We collectively established the boundaries, which were still pretty close to the group of now goths. But it gave us a different angle of view to their site. I doubt they had any idea we were there since we played with no flashlights. By this point, the grunge metal had been replaced by this creepy, ominous opera music. I succumbed to curiosity, but I wasn't about to sneak into their campsite. I just crept a little closer to see what they were doing. They had made a large campfire, beyond legal limits, and I couldn't see any of the group. On a tree, I saw something that had me initially freaked out, but I figured they were still feeling the weed and any other drugs they may have taken for this to be real and continue to play. I think we only played one game, then retired to our tents. At some point in the middle of the night, all of our adult leaders woke us up and told us to quickly and quietly pack up our things, take down our tents, and get back to the bus. As we were packing everything up, we couldn't help but notice the bonfire was still going strong, but the music had stopped and we heard people talking. The tone didn't sound like casual conversation either, but I couldn't hear specific words. I don't know how to describe it. Once everyone and everything was in the bus, the driver got us the hell out of there. The adults were abnormally quiet, and the scouts had congregated to the back of the bus. I don't remember if one of us told the adults about those guys, but we knew it had to have been regarding that strange group. A fellow scout from the other CTF team had also tried sneaking into their campsite and saw the same thing I did. Ever since, I'm inclined to think what we saw was real and a reason for us cutting the trip short. Hanging from the tree, he and I saw a decapitated dog and 2 severed human legs. I never learned anything more about that night.